It's the Brad and John Show.
The Brad and John Show. Today's date is July 1st. It is the first day of 2025 as far as the third quarter is concerned. And this is the B Block. And you know what we do in B Block, John?
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
Yes. And the ladies have to do it twice. It's in their contract. So say it, ladies. It is. Okay, ready for number 3, John?
I sure am.
It's number 3.
Caitlin Clark. Have you followed the escapades of Caitlin Clark getting the literal snot knocked out of her in the games? Have you seen this?
I have. I've seen everything from the defeat of her being tossed around and used like an actual basketball to the great Sophie Cunningham standing up for her teammate. Tell us about it, Brad.
Well, what's interesting is an article I read talked about the fact that Caitlin Clark has single-handedly revitalized the WNBA. And although she's making like $700,000 a year, which most people would say when you compare that to like the athletes, the male athletes like in football and baseball and hockey and basketball, she's not making very much money. But I think the total right now of her endorsement deals is like $36 million. So what she's making on the court is a small percentage of what she's making in her actual pocketbook. It has been floated, the idea has been floated that she become the centerpiece of a new women's basketball league, which essentially would promote the fact that Caitlin Clark is this most amazing person, but what they would do is they would promote these other women who wanted to promote the WNBA, or whatever the league would be called, the new league would be called, and not tear it down like some of the detractors that have been on Caitlin Clark. And once again, the idea being is Caitlin has put butts in the seats in auditoriums that did never before. I think in a couple times, wasn't it in last season that they actually moved the venues because of the fact they'd sold so many tickets? They actually decided, we need a bigger venue. I mean,
yeah, I think that was the first time that happened, Brad. And the only thing I would quibble with is you said maybe Caitlin Clark has revitalized the league. I think she vitalized it. I don't know if WNBA was ever considered interesting before Caitlin Clark was involved.
Well, if you know the history of the WNBA, it's essentially owned by the NBA, and it was brought into being to essentially say, hey, we're not just about dudes playing basketball, we're about dudettes playing basketball. And you're exactly right. And I will take your criticism. And you're right, John. It was not revitalized because it wasn't like once upon a time people were flocking to see WNBA games. And the interesting part of this is go back in last year and go back and watch the various TV ratings of the games that Caitlin Clark was in, and they went through the ceiling. I mean, and so the idea being is instead of the WN, and the complaint is, if you've watched any of these videos, there's tons of them online, there are fouls being committed on her, and sometimes hard fouls, flagrant fouls. I don't know what they call them in soccer. Would be a red card. You know what I mean? There would be red cards, issued for the way she's been treated.
Yeah, for sure. They'd get kicked out of the game.
Right, and nothing happens. And it's to the point where it's like, okay. Now the sad part of this, she's young, she's resilient. But you know what? There's only so much beating you can take. You know what I mean? Look at me. I'm a perfect example of that. There's only so much beating a body can take. So that's the interesting aspect of it. Caitlin Clark's own league. I think it'll ever happen? Probably not. But don't you think it's an interesting idea?
My guess is that there's only the pie for people being interested in women's professional basketball is only so big. But to steal a Brad Hildebrand phrase, maybe you need to just expand the pie. Instead of having small thinking and thinking, okay, only so many people want to watch women's basketball. If you expanded the pie, then you could maybe have 2 leagues. I doubt there's too many people that are excited about watching professional women's basketball, but I could be wrong.
John, I will give anecdotal evidence that my daughter, who was on the dance team at her high school, She did a lot of matter of fact, they did a lot of the home basketball games they performed. And they performed at both the girls' game, which is the earlier game, and then the boys' game. So I would go to watch both games because I was there to watch my daughter. And I will tell you that I preferred the girls' games better because to me it seemed like a cleaner game. There wasn't as much, and I know high school is not like the NBA where like there's elbows and it's almost like tackle football with a basketball. But to me it seemed like a cleaner game, and it seemed like the women, because of the fact they didn't have the height of the men, there was more finesse. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. And maybe it's just because we could stereotype that women aren't as violent as men. You're going to have less pushing and shoving, and you're going to have more finesse.
Right. And that's what I liked about the game. Okay, here we go with number 2.
It's time for Brad's number 2. It's time for Brad's number 2.
I try to keep these local in the Westplex and the St. Louis metro area, but my number 3 was Caitlin Clark. My number 2 is the Bryan Kohberger story. Are you familiar with what happened yesterday, John?
No, what happened?
They have essentially cut a plea deal. Bryan Kohberger is the alleged murderer of what they call the Idaho 4, the 3 girls and the young guy who were in this apartment building or small house or whatever it was, who were murdered, slaughtered, knifed to death in their sleep. Okay, and apparently the case is so airtight that his defense team essentially has negotiated a plea deal with the prosecutor that he will agree to 4 counts of first-degree murder, and in return for him pleading guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, he gets life in prison instead of the death penalty. And this morning I read several different accounts of siblings, moms, dads, brothers and sisters, friends of these 4 young people whose lives were snuffed out. And they were all not necessarily behind this. They wanted to have the guy die. Death penalty. They wanted to have the death penalty carried out. Now, I say the only problem with that is if you hear every once in a while we have it to the point where I think there was just one the other day, so-and-so was put to death, and he's been on death row since 1979. It's like they might as well be serving life in jail. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I mean, there's also a cost to keeping people alive in jail, right?
Right. And I get that there's, we can point out the fact that, hey, in this case, this guy, I mean, we had him here in Missouri. This guy was look at the crazy story up in Troy, Missouri with the, what was his name? His wife, Betsy Faria. Was that the, her husband got thrown in jail for 2.5 years until they found out it was Pam Hupp. I remember that story, Brad. Thanks to you. Right. So I don't know. I mean, but the reason I wanted to bring this up is that sometimes the police department, and I think sometimes the media makes the police department, the detectives, look like bumbling idiots. Okay? If you go research this case, this is police work, detective work par excellence. I mean, they did not have much to go on, and yet they nailed this guy. I mean, they nailed him. And if he's...
And Brad, isn't this, not to interrupt, but isn't this the case, if I recall correctly, and I haven't watched it too closely, but weren't they able to get either some kind of ring cam or something like that showed his car driving by at different times or something?
Well, yeah, but he said that he had an excuse for that. But the crazy thing about this is that he stabbed them with what's called a K-bar knife, and that's a military-style knife. And the DS, and D is dumb, and S is you know what. Even though he was studying for his PhD in criminology, he left the sheath of the K-bar knife behind, which had DNA on it. And that's how they ultimately cracked the case. Yes, there was, and they had the cell phone thing where his phone was being pinged in that area at that point in time, the whole bit. And it's just a horrendous case. How in the world can anyone break into a small apartment building? There were like 6 people living there or something like that, and knife them to death in their beds. I mean,
And what was his motive, Brad? Did they did they establish a motive?
no. I mean, that's the bizarre part of it is, I mean, there are some people saying that he was this criminology student. He was studying for his PhD at Washington State or wherever he was at, which is right across the border from Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. Some people saying that what he was trying to do, he was trying to essentially commit the perfect crime where he would never be caught, and he would show it. He'd be like, "I'll show those cops. I'm going to get my PhD in criminology.
I'm smarter than them. I can get away with it."
Right, I can get away with that. And the police work that went on was phenomenal. I mean, what they did with the testing of the DNA, and to the point where, I don't know if you know this part of the story. Part of the story was when they were pretty sure that they knew who this guy was, they went to his parents' house, I believe in Pennsylvania, and took some things out of the trash can and tested them for DNA, and that's where they got, I guess, what they call it, the familiar link, where essentially it's not obviously a direct link, but there's some way they can show the markers in there that that the DNA that they have corresponds with the DNA of his father, mother, that kind of stuff. And bizarre things to the point where, if you know this case real well, and I know it better than I should, on the way back, his dad flew into town, and they went back, I think it was for Thanksgiving break or Christmas break or something. I can't remember which one it was. But they were pulled over by the police at one point in time, and there's video cam, there's body cam of this, and it is sort of haunting because of the fact that it's to the point where it's like, okay, you're with your dad. It's to the point where, don't you say, it's sort of like this bizarre case with the girlfriend, boyfriend in the van deal where, he came home without her, Gabby Petite case where he came home without her, and her mom and dad says, "Where's Gabby?" "Well, I don't know. She's someplace back in Idaho," or whatever it was. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I remember that story, yeah.
Don't you question your son and say, "Son, your girlfriend, you left here in your van with your girlfriend, and you're driving back home in her van, and she's not here, and you don't know where she's at. Isn't there a problem with this?" But no, instead, they go on vacation with him and have a good time. I just don't get this kind of stuff. Okay, now, ready for number one?
I sure am, Brad.
Okay, and it's going to be a truncated number one because we're going to have 1A.
And now, big finish, Brad's number.
My number one is the exact same number one of John Combest. And John is probably saying to himself, how the hell is it possible that Brad and I think alike?
It's that big of a story, though,
right.
Brad.
How is it possible that we have the same thoughts? I'm looking at the St. Louis Public Radio version, and it says
By Sarah Kellogg.
Missouri Governor Kehoe signs $50.8 billion state budget, vetoes over $2 billion. Didn't you say it was like a $500 million? That he vetoed? Wasn't that what you said?
Yeah, there's stuff that he vetoed, and then there's stuff where he froze the spending, Brad.
Okay, so, and if I'm not mistaken, I learned this from Representative West. Is it still true that Missouri has a larger budget than the state of Illinois? Which, if that's true, I still find that hard to believe.
I've never compared them side by side, but now that would surprise me, but I guess I wouldn't be too surprised by that.
Richard West said this at a luncheon legislators 3 or 4 years ago, where he said that, and he gave some crazy statistic that in 7 years the state of the Missouri budget has like tripled or some number like that. I mean, I don't get this. There are so many things that I see. As a business person, there's so many things I see at government that they might as well just be taking, $100 bills, stacking them up in the parking lot, pouring lighter fluid on them, and just burning it and watching it. Oh, look at that money burn! I don't know. I mean, and some of the things you said that they kicked out. It's like, how in the world do these things get funded? You know what I mean? Who in their right mind?
Yeah, and what struck me and what strikes me as I scroll through the list in front of me is the number of people that are affected here who either called the governor yesterday or called the governor today and are like, but what about my allergy and asthma fund? It's really important. How could you cut $1 million of my allergy funding?
It's akin to the fact that the article I read last week, we didn't talk about this in the air, that Harvard is laying off people because of what Trump's done to them. He pulled away some of their funding. Harvard, that's sitting on $54 billion with a B dollars in their endowment, who probably could not charge any students for like the next 10 years? And still,
yeah, they would be just fine with the money. But think of the people that are reliant on that. If you work for, the asthma and allergy treatment department at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, like, you can't believe the governor, and you would point to every other project and say, okay, that project over there sucks. But we work on asthma and allergies. It's different.
Okay, can I give you the allergy solution? Here's Brad's allergy solution.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Brad's allergy solution is, you people out there that have kids with allergies, your house is too damn clean, okay? I grew up in a messy, dirty house. I don't have any allergies.
That's right, because you were inoculated.
Right. My kids grew up in a messy, dirty house. My kids don't have any allergies. But yet, little Susie, who lives in a house where her mother had the HEPA vacuum cleaner and the HEPA air filter and had the guys come in and clean the ducts once a week.
Susie has no antibodies.
Right. And sterilize the floor. And Susie has allergy to the pink carnations and peanuts and oil and vinegar and everything else out of the world.
She can't be around peanuts in the classroom.
Right. That's the allergy thing. DESE, I've just solved your problem. Just what you should do. You should send a note home with all your parents and say, it's factually true that if you have a clean house, your kids are going to have allergies. So, you know what, mom and dad, and you moms and dads, because we have to do that nowadays.
Yeah, you got to be inclusive.
Right, got to be inclusive. You can, don't vacuum the carpet every day, maybe once a month, and your kids won't have any allergies. And that antibacterial cleaner that you're using on everything, just use Windex. You'll be just fine.
Just knock it off.
Right.
I know we still have to get to 1A, Brad, but I think a solution is they could also bring little Susie to the crap transmitter. And when that farmer next to you is spraying his Roundup, you could just have Susie inhale the glyphosate.
Okay.
And that would also help her immune system.
Let's do 1A and C block, okay?
All right, I love it.
Okay, John, I forgot to ask, how many days in a row has Brad's top 3 been in business now?
It's entering adolescence, Brad. It's at 14.
Whoa, and you said it wouldn't last. Okay, we have to take a break.